Hello. So today we are going to look at a reflection, an actual reflection submitted by a student last year. And her reflection is going to be based on chapter 9 of Hudson Taylor's biography. So, what we're going to do is we will be looking at her reflection and we will be evaluating it according to the 9 questions that we looked at yesterday. And why are we doing this? Let me just mention this. I'm hoping that you, as you try to evaluate other people's reflections, and that's what you're going to be doing later on based on these questions, I am hoping that you will be able to pick up some realizations along the way that will help you improve in your reflection skills. Because, as I've mentioned yesterday, reflection or writing reflection papers actually it's not just about language, it's about critical thinking. And critical thinking develops as we practice it and as we practice it over time. So that's why we are doing something like this. Okay, so let's get started. As I said, it's going to be based on chapter 9 of Hudson Taylor's biography. So I thought it's a good idea to just give you an overview of chapter 9 because you might have forgotten already. That's a few weeks ago. So basically, in this chapter, Hudson already arrived in China and he began to witness firsthand. Before he was just reading it from books, but now he could see that there was an ongoing war in China at that time, and he saw how pitiful the situation of the Chinese people was. He also see the need to learn Mandarin and acquire more medical training to be able to minister to them because his heart was broken. He was filled with compassion for the Chinese people. Okay, so that's an overview, not a summary, but an overview of chapter 9 so that we can understand the context of the reflection we will be looking at. Okay, let me read now one student's reflection. Okay, first, worst of all, in the midst of all the suffering he had seen, he felt useless. Uh, okay, by the way, this is unedited. This is raw. So then you're going to be seeing grammar mistakes. And yeah, I wanted to show you a raw example of a student's reflection. When you introduce a direct quotation like this, you have to introduce it properly. You have to say first, according to the author, or the author wrote, the authors wrote, yeah, something like that. Hudson felt useless because he couldn't say what he wanted. He wanted to share the love of God, the living God, with the Chinese people. I understand this feeling. This feeling happens when we go to a new country or new place as missionaries and we cannot communicate with the people as we want. I am having the same experience as Hudson in IGSL, so I changed it a little bit. I felt useless during this time. I feel useless during this time. When we have faculty meeting, planning, I really want to share something, but I can't. And also, I don't understand all the conversation. Even I want to share the gospel with my helper, but I know the feeling is just temporary. It will go when my English improves. I will be useful in God's time. I have to be patient. Okay, so some wonderful reflection there, but let's evaluate this reflection according to the 9 questions that we have. First question, is it focused on one part of the story? A big yes. Yeah, that's one good thing she did. She didn't try to talk about many parts of the story in this paragraph, in this part of her reflection, so you only focused on one. Secondly, Is the reflection based on an important part of the story? Yes, also a big yes, because we can see that this part of the story that she mentioned is pivotal. What I mean by pivotal is because of what had Hudson felt, like he felt useless, we can see that he did something in response to this. Like he didn't just, oh, I feel useless, I don't want to do anything. No, we can see that because of this experience, Hudson learned Mandarin, right? And this is not only important for chapter 9, this is an important part of the rest of the chapters because of what Hudson saw and experienced and felt. He did something, and that forever changed the way he did ministry. Is it deep enough? How can you make it deep or deeper? I have to let out a sigh because this is the hardest question among the 9 questions. Why is it hard? Because it's very subjective. What I mean by subjective is your answer could be different from mine. There's no. It's not like it's not like black and white. It's a very gray area when we say, oh, it might be deep enough for you, but it might not be deep enough for me, right? So I'm gonna be patient with you with this one, but just try to answer it according to your standard of when of what is deep and what is not deep. Okay, I would say that it is deep enough. I really like how she was able to develop a reflection out of one sentence, and she was able to relate it to herself, and I like that. I like that. But also to answer the question, how can you make it deep or deeper? So it's already deep, but how can we make it deeper? I wish she could have mentioned also the solution because she only mentioned the problem here, right? It's like yes, Hudson felt useless, but what did he do afterwards? Did he just, oh, I'm useless, I can do nothing? No, he did something, right? He tried to learn the language. There was hard work. He started working on his Mandarin, and that's something that she could have mentioned here to make it even deeper. Because when you mention something like that, you could go much deeper than her reflection here. You could talk about the heart behind Hudson's perseverance or Hudson's hard work. You can say that he was really determined to to fulfill his calling, something like that, which is still in line with her reflection. Like she is not going off her reflection. It's still very in line with her reflection because she later on she'll be talking about her English, right? And I have to be patient. So she could have talked about that part when what Hudson did after he realized or after he felt that he was useless. So that's one thing she could have done to make it deeper because that will open up a way for her to reflect on even deeper things. Yeah. Okay? So that will be my suggestion here. Is it personal? Very much so. Very much so. It is very personal. I like the way she talked about her frustration, her experience. Yeah, so as much as we want to say that we have figured things out, we we would do well to show our vulnerability in our reflection paper. When I say vulnerability, it means your weakness. Because if, in our reflection paper, we're not trying to show that we have already um, reached a certain level and we don't need anything anymore. Yeah, your professors would not want that. So if you can be vulnerable, if you can show your weakness and still be very honest, I'm not saying that you make up things just to please your professor, but if we could if you could talk about our weakness, just like what she did here, this is very humble for her to. It's very humble for her to talk about these things. I felt useless. I felt useless when we have faculty meeting. I really want to share something. I could not, something like that. So I really love this, how personal she made her reflection. And I want you to do the same thing. Okay? Is it connected to the story? Yes, very much so. Her reflection is very much connected to the story. Like she related her story to Hudson feeling useless, and she also mentioned the same thing. She also mentioned the same thing. Is what challenged or inspired you clearly stated? Okay, as I mentioned in question number 3, the answer to question number 3, it's something that I wish she had mentioned, because she only mentioned the part where she could relate to, like Hudson felt useless. But what about what challenged or inspired you? Because it's not just Hudson feeling useless. Definitely, that did not challenge or inspire you. Maybe in some way, because even a Hudson Taylor, a great a man as he is, a great a missionary as he is, felt that way. But don't just stop there. As I said, go on and talk about what he did after feeling that way. Like, you really put in a lot of effort to learn the Mandarin language, and that takes a lot of humility. So I would say that it wasn't clearly stated. The answer to this is no. Don't just mention, when you write a reflection paper, don't just mention the things you can relate to. Also mention the things that you can learn from, or you can learn from the character. Yeah, so that's what's missing in her reflection. Is the application practical? So where is her application? Right here. I have to be patient. Now, is it practical? No. No, it's a good application, but it's not practical. When we say practical, it's something that you can do. First of all, it must be specific, right? When you say I have to be patient, it's quite vague. Like how? How are you going to be patient? How can you be patient? That's the character trait. It's like saying I should be good. I should be humble. And the big question would be how? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? So don't just mention a character trait when you give applications. Mention something that you can really do, something specific. And it should be measurable. It should be measurable. That means you should be able to ask the question, was I able to do it? Was I able to do it? So that's what I mean when you say measurable. So an example of, if I were to write this, like, I have to be patient. She could have said, okay, I will study English twice a week. Like, I will do an independent study of English twice a week, or I will enroll in the English class and learn English. Okay, that takes a lot of patience, because enrolling yourself in a course, in a language course, takes a lot of patience. It doesn't come overnight, right? Or I will continue to sit in the meetings the faculty meetings, like what she mentioned here, and try to keep up with them during the meeting. Try to ask questions if I didn't understand anything, while at the same time working on my English. By how are you going to work on your English? Yeah, by enrolling or by doing independent study, something like that. So that's what I mean when I say, is it practical? Is the application practical? Okay. Number 8, is the application related to the lesson you learned from the story? Even though it's not practical, it's very related to what Hudson went through, right? He was patient. He patiently learned the language. But again, I wish you could have mentioned that. Now, is your reflection longer than the part of the story you're reflecting on? Okay, I changed it from, if you noticed, yesterday it was summary, right? But I thought it might not be clear because it's not really a summary right here. That question was for writing project number 6. Okay. So forget about that question first. I changed it a little bit. So here's what I'm trying to say. Look at her reflection. So this is her, not reflection, this is the part where she mentioned the things that challenged her. This is what she's reflecting on, right? And compare the length of it to her reflection. This is her actual reflection. So you can see that her reflection is longer than the part where she is reflecting on. She was reflecting on. Okay? And the answer to this question is yes, a big yes. So she did something excellent here. She did it excellently because it's much longer than what she was reflecting on. As I said, I have had some students who were trying to repeat, say a lot of things, like mention a lot of things about the story. They would try to elaborate, repeat the same things that you could read from the chapter, and I feel like you don't need to repeat those things because I read the same chapter that you read. So I already know those things. I want to know your reflection. Don't repeat those things to me because I'm not asking for them. What I'm asking for is your reflection. So focus more on your reflection. Just briefly state it. What is it you're reflecting on? And then go ahead and elaborate on your reflection. Okay? After all, this is a reflection paper, not a summary paper. Okay, so I want you to do the same thing. I want you to copy and paste. I'll be posting this on Slack. And then, so copy and paste it in the discussion forum when you reply to your classmates' reflection. And answer each question with a yes or no and an explanation. I want an explanation. Don't just answer with a yes or no. I want some justification. Justify your answers. Okay? Explain your answers. Why did you say yes? Why did you say no?